we've talked about how American Sign Language and cueing um, can't really easily be compared because um, they are so different. That one is a language and one is a modality. I want to look at that concept again in the frame of um, language learning and sort of what the demands are to learn one or the other. Uh, when people learn American Sign Language, well, let's start with children first. Um, if you are, if you have a native proficient ASL signer and they sign at a child, deaf or hearing, that child can naturally and passively acquire that language, and it will happen with a set of milestones um, similar to learning a spoken language. It will occur over many years, um, but a little bit differently. We do find that expressively signs tend to appear earlier than speech among hearing children. So we do see some differences there. Um, but in general, um, children acquire the language naturally and passively over a course of years. For hearing people who learn American Sign Language, again, this is like um, sort of any second language acquisition. Um, you will have you will spend years acquiring the language. You may have interference from your first language, so that you make mistakes that reflect the grammar and syntax of your own language, and that's very natural. Um, Now, when we talk about cueing, this is where we're going to see a big difference. So, deaf or hearing children could acquire cued English um, over the course of years, naturally and passively, um, with similar milestones of language acquisition. And then, if we look to learning cued English as adults, we're going to see something very different now. Because you're learning a modality, hearing adults who have already acquired English through speech can learn to cue in an extremely short period of time. The reason why is because they already know the hard part of cued English, which is English. English is the hard part. Knowing all of the vocabulary, grammar, syntax, morphology, all the rules of English. If you already speak English, learning the cue English just requires learning 8 hand shapes, 4 placements, a couple of movements, and learning how to encode phonology with your hand. So learning to cue is generally done it can be done in a weekend workshop. And fluency, depending on how often you use it and how often you practice, can be achieved on the order of months. And of course, that's very different than adults learning American Sign Language. When you learn American Sign Language, you will study it for many years just to be not that great at it because you're acquiring a language which is extremely difficult no matter what the language. Um, so learning to sign ASL for adults is a matter of acquiring a brand new language. Learning to cue for hearing adults is just learning a new modality. I do want to point out too, learning to cue English for deaf adults would be like learning a second language, and they would learn cued English over the course of years. The modality would come quicker, but they would have to start acquiring the vocabulary, the grammar, and the syntax, and that would take years, and they would have interference from their first language. So these are some of the things I want you to start thinking about as we separate language and modality, And as you start thinking about what kinds of recommendations you might make to parents with deaf children, and to make sure that these considerations take into account the family's situation, their needs, their goals, their resources, um, and are not based on our familiarity, our comfort, um, and our perhaps level of proficiency in one or another.